All right. In front of me, this is a gas tank, kind of obvious, but this is from my convertible. It was replaced shortly before I got it. That's why it's still mostly black on the outside, and inside it's rust free. So I'm guessing the original one is long gone. But this is kind of what it looks like. It mounts underneath the rear, the what we call the passengers. Sorry, the back seat bump. So these cars didn't come with back seats, but you could put one in, and this is the little raised section that they would be set on. And right underneath that is where this guy mounts. So not much to this. They're almost always steel, and they're usually made out of stamped steel. You can see that there. You can see the welds. Goes all around the ring like that. I wish they did it closer to the body, because then I can nip this off. Being this had fuel in it, I don't want to weld in it. That's not safe. And to wait for it to dry would it would be months before I'd be half comfortable welding with it. So I'd rather it sit for a year. But yeah, it kind of sucks because these corners, you can see they stick out pretty far, so it makes removing these and installing these a pain in the rear. I'll show you that in just a little bit, but while I had the tank out in front of me, I wanted to show you a few things. So this is the vent. This is what will go to the evac canister that's up front here. There it is. You can see that yellow thing. That's where that goes. This is the fuel sending unit I showed you. The carb models, this is what it will look like. If you have EFI, there will be a little screen on the end of the pickup tube. And up here there will be an electric pump. And I'm pretty sure you have a bigger hole in the top of the tank for the electrical sending unit. And, these carb ones, they all should look like that, and sadly, I only have one EFI car, and I can't get to it at the moment, but I'm confident that it's bigger than that for a hole. But it goes in pretty easy. Just don't force it to do anything, but once you got it where it needs to be, it'll always go in pretty easy. I'm struggling to get this in the spot now. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Gotta fight around them tabs. Then there's this lock collar that goes around it, and it goes underneath these couple tabs here. There's 3 of them, or 4. 4? Yeah. Well, okay, just 3. Yeah. So there's that, and they're actually pretty easy to get off if they're not rotted on. You can grab any screwdriver, and this works out real slick. You can see that there's raised portions all around it. Like, you can put a screwdriver on, put it up against a tab, and then work it against the other parts of the fill sender until this guy spins lefty-loosey off. At which point you can pull this off. And then on it, the bigger tube is the fuel send. That's where the fuel gets picked up and sent to your carb. The smaller one is the fuel return, if you have a return system. My high output cars, none of them seem to have a fuel return on the carb, and they don't seem to have a fuel return line anywhere on the car. So the high output models might not have this. And like I said, EFI cars, all this is totally different anyways. The vent might be the same though. And I know the filler nozzle is the same. But speaking of which, these are the filler nozzle tubes. This one is the one that the fuel actually comes in through. And then this one's the vent that will keep it from cavitating. This is kind of what, pretty simple. There's some insulation pads here so that going down the road, this thing isn't getting, the metal's not getting rubbed through. and puncturing and not making a lot of noise as it goes down the road. This is the pan it sits in. We'll hop underneath the car and we'll show you the straps. We'll start on this side. So over here, you can actually see both straps. I have them handing down. On one end, this is where a bolt will go in from the underside of this, just like that. And it's kind of a pain in the rear to get to. I'd show you it, but I really can't. This goes directly above the exhaust pipe. And I like having this hole in my floor, so I can show you this. So it's directly above the exhaust pipe in that raised little dimple of the floor pan. So that right there, that is raised because on the other side of the sheet metal, on the underside of the car, on the other side of the sheet metal, there is a nut welded to the back for a bolt to go through that and into that nut. On the other end of the straps, there's a pin that goes through the strap and a bracket, so it's hinged. That's why they're only hanging down on the forward side. It's a 13mm bolt that holds these guys down. I haven't done the backs yet, and I don't plan on doing them for a while yet. Once I have this car on the rotisserie and up in the air, I'll take those off and I'll make it all pretty and I'll show you a video. But for now, stand up best we can, and we'll walk over to the other side of the car. What I found best to do was to cut off the two inlet tube. So this is the fuel inlet, the throat, the nozzle, whatever you want to call it. And these are the two hoses that go into the corner of the tank like I showed you. So if you can imagine this under the car, this is what it looks like. It actually sits right about there because the end of the filler unit is right before the rear control arm. And then these hoses connect, right about in here, right in here. And then the hoses will actually go, I'll show you. The hoses go between the lower control arm there and the frame. And then they travel straight to the tank. And you can see this is where the tank has been. The brown spot is where it was where the insulator was rubbing against the metal, so it was doing its job fine. And all that gray, you can see they primed the car, they put the tank on, and then they painted the car. I don't know if they're all like this, but that's how this one was. And then there, you can actually see the mounting nut for the tank strap. It's that. There we go. It's that guy right there. It looks like galvanized steel with some rust in the center because that's where the bolt goes. It rusts. Like I said, this is what the cavity looks like without the tank in it. Pretty much the order of operations is to cut those two nozzle hoses, or you can take them off of the filler tube. Sometimes they'll really fight you. My filler tube was plastic. I don't know if they're all like that, but if they're metal, obviously the metal tube will rust and the rubber will vulcanize to the metal, and when it rusts it becomes a rough surface, so the rubber hose really doesn't want to come off. I figured that was the case, so I just cut mine, but it turns out the tube is plastic, so the hose actually would have slid off with ease because it was the tank was replaced so recently, about 3 to 7 years ago, I think. But that's not always the case. Best idea when you put new hoses on the filler tube, give them a coat of grease so that they come off easy later. They won't vulcanize to the plastic or anything that way. So I opted just to cut them. That worked out fine. Next, I had to cut my fuel send, my fuel return, and then my tank vent. I cut all those because you can see my hard lines here. they're awfully rusty. So they're coming off and they're all getting replaced. I'm thinking about switching to the high output carb, so I don't even know if I'll need or have a fuel return. But obviously I need a send and I need a vent for the vapor canister. And then you can see the electrical connector just dangling on the floor. Try to grab that here. That's all it is. It's kidney bean shaped. So it really only goes on one way, and you just fill it with some dielectric grease and it'll pop on. When you drop the tank, the cord for this is only a foot long, so you can install it with the tank close to being installed, and then when you drop the tank onto the ground, this will just pop off. It's not hauled in very hard. The nipples that it attaches to for connectors, they're shaped in a way so that this goes on and off pretty easy. And it does. So once you've disconnected all of your hoses, you don't need to worry about that because you won't be able to get to it. But once you've cut all of your hoses, you can undo these straps. Like I said, it's a 13mm bolt that holds it on the top. You undo them both and the tank will drop down a little bit. It will still be held up because if you cut the filler hoses on the other side of the control arm, the hoses will actually rest against the top side of this control arm and will keep the tank from dropping down all the way, which is great. And on the other end, I showed you those squared corners of the tank. They actually rest on the exhaust because the exhaust is U-shaped. So it actually rests on that once you got it dropped down. And once you have it dropped down, you need to take this end of the tank, swing it towards the front of the car and towards the passenger seat. And then once you do that, you can now drop the passenger side of the tank down, and then you can reach further in. You can grab the tank like in the middle, and then you just need to bring it towards you about 4, 5, 6 inches, and then the whole rest of the tank will just drop down away from the exhaust. At which point, this guy, your fuel level sensor plug, will disconnect. And then you just reinstall in reverse order. When you go to install it, you might need a buddy. And then, of course, whenever you're doing this, have the car jacked up as far as you need it to be. Right now, I don't even know if it's resting on my jack. I lowered my jack so I could walk around the car easier. You can see I could slip under it pretty good. Once you pull the tank off, no roof, no trunk, all that adds up. It's pretty light back here, but that doesn't mean that you can fit underneath it comfortably or remove the tank comfortably. So best to just get it up in there. I have a video on the jack points, or the best places to jack it, I should say, if you need that. Anyhow, that's how it is. It was pretty easy, actually. The hardest thing was, like I said, was getting to that one strap bolt that's underneath this raised portion. That was kind of a pain to get at because it's literally right above the exhaust. Once you do that, it drops down real easy. If this is the tank, you turn it out like that, lower that side, and then you can just drag it out underneath the passenger door. Works perfectly. But that's all I needed to cover with you guys. So I'll let you go for now, and best of luck. We'll see you next time.